Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this regular scheduled meeting of the Temple City Council for October 1st of 2009. If you'll please rise, Pastor Dana Wilhelmsen with the Emmanuel Lutheran Church will lead us in our invocation, and that'll be followed by Chuck Luco, President of Robert S. Love Foundation, leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor.
A text that I've chosen for all of us to focus our hearts and minds on is basically a blessing for you guys who stand in front of me and an encouragement to those behind. It's St. Paul's letter to the Romans. He writes, "Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. For rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. Would you have no fear of the one who is in authority? Then do what is good, and you'll receive his approval, for he is God's servant for your good." Our local community needs a constant level of loyalty to it. It calls for a true allegiance, which includes a sacrifice of our own comforts for the good of all. Sometimes that loyalty takes place at the loss of a hero, whether it be a policeman or a fireman. But every one of us is called to sacrifice our lives. We're to sacrifice our time in the effort to not only obey the law, but to make every effort to hone it into a better mechanism. It means resisting forms of corruption. It means freeing every obstacle to thought and conscience. Loyal citizens know that in our community all men are equal, and that any attempt to make classes amongst us is an act of disloyalty. We can have a better and healthier and happier and more powerful community if we stand all together, hand in hand, and put our loyalty to those who serve us and to pray for their work. To that end we pray. O Lord God, we give you thanks for our beloved community. And we ask that you would create a sense of loyalty among our leaders and our citizens to the principles on which it has been developed. We thank you that over the years, that through vibrant public discourse, that the quality of our lives has been enhanced through the leadership of committed men and women who serve on this council. Guided by your principles, may more of our citizens become involved in the free process of government, that we may together all serve to your glory and to the benefit of our neighbors. Let us all be loyal to our civil government, knowing that it has been established by your hand and that you have promised to work good in all things to those who love you. Bless this meeting, Heavenly Father, with the presence of your divine Spirit, and season the words of all with overtures of loyalty to the good of others. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on our agenda is shown to be a receipt of a presentation from Dr. Vivian Baker, Superintendent of Belton Independent School District, and that's actually this posted. That will be scheduled for our next meeting. So we'll go on to the next item on our agenda, proclamations. We have a couple of proclamations and recognitions this evening. The first is to call on Cynthia Washington, who is the Special Projects Coordinator of the National Federation of the Blind, and many of her friends that are here from the VIPs and have a proclamation in recognition. And then we'll let you make some comments about some events that you have coming up. Ms. Washington and friends, whereas the National Federation of the Blind, the NFB, was founded in 1940 to end discrimination against the blind and to secure first-class citizenship for all blind persons. Today, the Federation, representing more than 50,000 members across the country, continues to work to secure equal rights and opportunities for the blind. Whereas the NFB works to change attitudes about blindness by providing information to parents, teachers, school administrators, and business and political, social, and civic leaders, since blind people and blindness are still frequently misunderstood. the NFB has developed a public education campaign, Meet the Blind Month, to create opportunities for people to learn firsthand that blind people are basically like everyone else and lead full and active lives. Whereas we also desire to recognize White Cane Safety Day, October the 15th, because the white cane in our society has become one of the symbols of the blind person's ability to come and go on his own, and its use has promoted courtesy and special consideration to those individuals on our streets and highways. Whereas the white cane is a symbol of dignity and determination, and it is a tangible reminder that those individuals who have have impaired eyesight possess not only the desire but also the ability to lead full, independent, and productive lives. Whereas the observance of Meet the Blind Month and White Cane Safety Day renews our commitment to eliminate physical and attitudinal barriers that continue to hinder the full participation of blind persons in our society. Now therefore I, William A. Jones III, Mayor of the City of Temple, Texas, do hereby proclaim the month of October of 2009 as Meet the Blind Month, and October 15th of 2009 as White Cane Safety Day in the City of Temple, Texas. And I urge each and every citizen to accept the invitation to meet members of the National Federation of the Blind, the voice of the nation's blind, and become more aware of the meaning of white cane and all it symbolizes. And in testimony whereof I witness my hand and the seal of the City of Temple, Texas, this first day of October of 2009. And Ms. Washington, let me bring this down and present this proclamation to you.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson.
Thank you. And thank you for all of those who participated in our community and been active and involved. We're glad to see you.
I appreciate you and I have other members here with me today, and I have been in special comments, but I can do it right now. I want to thank you personally for checking on me while I was ill. You haven't seen me in a couple of years. And also Lieutenant Best and Chief Wallace. I appreciate you all. And the community leaders, Judy Morales, Pat Patterson, Sergeant Ed, and there's others, and the City Secretary Office, the girls. Hey, we hadn't seen you since Piano Wall. You hadn't been downtown, but you know God has blessed me to still be in the land of the living, and I appreciate you. Thank you very much. And one of the Butler is going to finish it up here, and we appreciate everyone here. And October 15th, not only pay special attention, but every day. We appreciate you. God bless you. Juanita?
Cindy asked me to bring to your attention that there's going to be a coin. It's called the Louis Braille Bicentennial Silver Dollars. And there's going to be 4 million of these sold, which will generate matching funds for Braille literacy programs for the blind. And then she asked me also to read a small portion here from a president's report by Mark Maurer. Although the past year has been one of economic uncertainty for our country, and indeed for most of the world, and although the National Federation of the Blind has felt the influence of this economic uncertainty, our unity as an organization has remained as strong as it has ever been. Our dedication to securing progress for the blind remains unshakable, and our purpose is the vital force that makes the National Federation of the Blind an unstoppable agent for change. Problems may abound today as they have in the past. However, we will not let them inhibit our progress. We will not let them dampen our enthusiasm. We will not let them alter our determination to achieve quality for all the blind, we are the National Federation of the Blind.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dee Dee, is somebody going to tell us about October the 10th?
Yeah, I'm signed up to.
Oh, you're going to do that? Okay, very good. Next proclamation is to Mr. Chuck Luco, who's the president of the Robert S. Love Foundation. Mr. Luco. Chuck, thanks for being here. Nice to see you. Sure, you can just, that's just fine. You don't do this much. We're glad to have you here. Thank you. This proclamation comes from the office of the mayor. Whereas the Robert S. Love Foundation was established in the memory of Robert S. Love's faith, courage, and love of his family during his battle with cancer. from the time he was diagnosed in 1994 until his death in 2002. Whereas the Robert S. Love Foundation is committed to finding a cure for cancer and supporting Scott and White cancer programs. There are a variety of fundraising Love Cures events scheduled during the month of October. Whereas the funds raised from the Foundation's Love Cures events stay local, and this year will go to the Cancer Research Institute. And whereas every citizen has a part to play in the fight against cancer, and much work remains to find a cure, which can only be accomplished through continuing diligent research. Now therefore I, William A. Jones III, Mayor of the City of Temple, Texas, do hereby proclaim October of 2009 as Love Cures Month in the City of Temple, Texas. And I encourage all citizens to join with the Robert S. Love Foundation in full support of the Love Cures activities during the month of October, and to remember that all funds raised will be used locally towards the goal of defeating cancer. In testimony whereof I witness my hand and the seal of the City of Temple, Texas, this first day of October 2009. And Chuck, I think last year was the first year of getting the Love Foundation activities going to help raise funds. And what an amazing launch you had last year with that great event, and to move this year into a full month of activities, and the support you're receiving from this community. It's just a great testimony to the love of Robert, to your great friendship for him, and to your dedication to this effort. And so we say thank you to you for your leadership in this cause, and thank you for all you do. I appreciate you. There's a mic right there, so that's why.
Okay.
You can just leave it there. It picks up this fine.
Gotcha. I just want to say thank you, Mayor. Thank you to the council. Thank you to the City of Temple and the City of Temple staff. We may have a few of our Robert S. Love Foundation board members here, if they would maybe stand up if they're here, or anyone associated with the Robert Love Foundation. It looks like it's Pat Patterson and Linda Chupit. And I'd just like to say thank you for the commitment that this community has made, particularly with the direction toward bioscience and research, and that this community actually has a chance to be on the same level with large metro areas doing the same type of research right here in Temple, and for our organization to be able to be a part of that. We thank each and every one of you for that vision. And I want to thank Ms. Insminger for slipping this on the agenda at the last minute. It was kind of a last minute thing, and she does a bang up job, as y'all all know. And I'd like to say one other thank you to Ken Sikora and the park staff. They've supplied tables at our banquet, and that helps a lot. And in general, the support of this whole community, I just say thank you, and we hope to keep this going. And cancer's not a death sentence anymore. So thank you, and thank this whole community.
What do you have going on this month?
Thank you for telling me that. This Saturday is the cycling event. It's 4 different bicycling distances that leave out of Scott and White 8 o'clock Saturday morning. And then the next weekend, the 9th, 10th, and 11th, is a tennis tournament at Wildflower Country Club. It's casual. It's a doubles tournament. Then the following weekend on the 17th will be a 5K and 10K and a 1 mile walk run and most of that course is going to be on the brand new Pepper Creek Hike and Bike Trail, which I went and looked at today, and this whole community needs to go take a look at that thing. It rivals and that surpasses things that are down in Georgetown and Austin. That thing's unbelievable. Waterfalls, it's beautiful. So then our golf tournament is on October 19th here in Wildflower Country Club, and then a dinner auction October 30th, and it'll be at the Cancer Research Center, which is at the old TI building, which the city had the vision to purchase and then subsequently sell to Scott and White, and it's a magnificent place. And you can get details at lovecures.org, and thank you for all y'all are doing.
Thanks, Jim. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Citizens who desire to address the council on any matter may sign up to do so prior to this meeting. Public comments will be received during this portion of the meeting, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. No discussion or final action will be taken by the council as a result of your comments this evening. We have a number of people signed up on several different items this evening, so I'm going to really watch the time very closely and ask you if I ask you to wrap up, then please do so fairly quickly. But watch your time, and we'll give you an opportunity to speak to us. So let's start with Ms. Doris Rodriguez. Ms. Rodriguez? Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Thank y'all for having me here. I appreciate the time. I'm just working stiff like everybody else. I work for the HOP. That's a bus company that employs us to pick up in certain places. And yes, I only spend with them about 3 years. And I understand that they have certain places for us to pick up. They have signs. And these signs, as I understand, were put in place by the city. I thought that was very interesting, since one of the places is the mall, and there's a sign there between the JCPenney's and Frederick's, for us to park. I do think it's a little bit peculiar, but it's okay with me because, I do work for a living like everybody else. Try to make it paychecks, But there is something peculiar about it. I have pictures if you like to see. But I don't question my employer. They tell me what to do, tell me when to get there, how long to stay, It's okay, it's fine. So I'm pretty sure that they had some kind of agreement with the city. So I really didn't question it. I drive 520 route. It picks up a lot of people. Not a lot of people, but quite a few people. There's elderly, the VA people, Scott and white people. And that's good with me, a lot of them are nice people, very friendly. I like them. But I do have a little layover there, according to this little book I got from my employer, that, we don't all get them. Everybody gets them. Anybody wants them, they can have them. And I do have a little layover there at the mall for a few minutes, for breaks. Not long, just a few, about 5 minutes. But, sometimes you try to stretch it a little bit. Because, what we call a 10-100 is like a bathroom break for us people. And there's nobody to take our place, so we don't have time to really think about shutting off the buses, just locking them up and all this stuff. So we just go in, take a quick break, come back and jump on a bus and hop all our merry way. But one day, I come out there, and there's this cop out there. He says, "Where in the heck were you? Where you been?" So I understand that you parked your bus here. And I said, "Yeah, I was told I could do that. My employee said I could do this." And he's asked me for my driver's license and all this stuff. So I'm thinking, wow, he's going to give me a ticket for parking where there's a sign that the city put up there? I can't hardly believe it. I mean, I don't make that much money. But the sign does generate quite a bit of revenue for the city. Quite a bit. Matter of fact, the HOP bought 2 brand new buses off that revenue. Coming from the government. I'm sure that's where it came from. Because, $280,000 for one bus. Ooh-wee. Matter of fact, I rode that bus and drove it for a couple of weeks, not long. Until it got smacked. It was a pretty bus. Matter of fact, my people liked that bus. But that didn't last long, but that's okay. I know some of y'all revenue people came in, whatever you call yourselves, paid for that bus. Okay, sorry. But anyway, I got a ticket there, and I don't think that's my ticket. That's all I'm saying. It's not my ticket. That's my thing. That's my comment. I mean, I just work for the company and for the city. That's what I thought. Even though the city don't claim us too much, according to somebody. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez.
And I like that. If I could do something about it, it would be nice.
Thank you, ma'am.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Mr. Justice Bigby?
Good evening, Mayor, council members, city employees that serve us so diligently. I want to thank you for this opportunity to tell you what a great place the city of Temple is to me, and I've lived all over the world. We're very fortunate and very blessed to live here. Having said that, I couldn't help but recall the indication and being asked to be loyal to the community. Being loyal is a two-way street, as we all know. It can be up and down. So I was thinking earlier today about preparing a couple of slides, and I realized that this is a very busy time for you, and I won't take your time with slides. But in our country today, unfortunately, the people don't want to trust honest people such as yourself. And you hear these snide remarks and suggestions that I wonder which one made money off of this or that, off of that. So I'm here this evening to say that one of the things you have on your agenda is to whether or not to schedule an election and wait on changing the city charter. I'm here to tell you that I don't distrust a person that I'm looking at here. In fact, I trust the people that are sitting behind me, and I'm proud to be a citizen of Temple, Texas. I think you do a fabulous job, but perception is what we got to do away with, as I see it. And so, having said that, I had a little levity with one of the people I was talking with earlier this afternoon, and he said, well, maybe we need term limits. Well, apparently there's a cartoon going around saying about, we got term limits. And I said, really? He said, yeah, 2 terms. You get 1 in office and 1 in prison. So I said, no, that's not what I'm going to speak about. I'm going to tell them that I appreciate the opportunity to be a citizen of Temple, Texas. I trust every one of you. And if you so decide to put that on the ballot, well, that's good. And if you don't, well, then that's good too. Because I think that the people on this council live their lives like Proverbs 22, which says, a good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, and love and favor rather than silver and gold. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I can't read the first name on this. Ms. Walby? Yes, ma'am.
I only get 3 minutes.
Yes, ma'am. Close to it.
My name is Linnell Mabry. I would like lower speeds on our highways in our cities, but I know traffic must move. My complaint, speed bumps have been put on my street. They are very, very depressing for me. My street is 3 blocks long, extremely quiet, or was. It has 2 4-way stops, and so far as I can determine, about 95% of the people. We don't have a speed limit posted. I have no idea what it is. Drive within the safe range and stop at the stop signs. Last year, one of the neighbors, Mrs. Oldham, submitted to the committee complaint that the neighborhood was not safe for her 2 grandchildren. I can't answer why, what the complaint is. The only thing I've heard from any of the neighbors, it's not safe for her 2 grandchildren to ride their bicycle on the street. There may be others, that's all I've heard. The complaint was denied. This year she filed another complaint. Same thing. The neighborhood is not safe for her 2 grandchildren. same complaint. There is a little more traffic on the street now because school is in session for about 30 minutes in the morning. So far as I can tell, the drivers are all safe. Yes, there has been instances where we have some speeders, not many, but a few. One of the biggest speeders is one of the neighbor's grandson who comes in at a high rate, goes through all of your stop signs. A petition was submitted, or whatever you want to call it, for the neighbors to sign. Did they want speed bumps or not? We were told 2/3 of the people had to vote for the speed limit to get for the speed bumps to have them installed. There was a very unorderly tongue lagging going around the neighborhood who did not vote for speed bumps. Mr. Bartz formed an orderly rescue. He received 7 votes for. There were 8 against. 8 against the speed bumps. 8 for the bumps, 7 against. In the backyard, I overheard the neighbors having a big argument, one way and the other. So actually there was 7.5 to 7.5. There are 16 houses on the block. One is a rent house, leaving 15 who should be able to vote.
Need to finish up.
I have, pardon?
Please finish your comment.
Please? Finish or quit?
No, just wrap it up, please.
Okay, we now have speed bumps.
What is your-
The speeds have greatly increased, not reduced, greatly increased. The cars drive up to the speed bump in their position. They gun it, and away they go. Through stop signs, everything else. It is no longer safe to be around there. Your speed is greater. About 75% of the traffic is now off the street, which is, it's very light. I would like the speed bumps reduced or some other form used to protect your children, whatever it is. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Willie Hall, or? Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Glad to be here. My name is Willie Hall, a servant of God. I came here, and I've been here before, and I complained about a driver. I'm legally blind. I'm on dialysis, heart trouble, all that good stuff. The Lord didn't spare me anything. And I asked the Lord, Lord, why? I've been all over the country. Why Temple? But I'm here. But I'm just here to say this. I complained about this driver before. Nothing has been done. I even hired a lawyer just to get me his last name so I could present a last name to someone. I haven't heard from a lawyer. He wouldn't even call me back. I said, what in the world? What is this? What's wrong here? I just wanted the last name, so when I'm trying to keep this local. But if I have to, I will take it to, step by step until I have to go see Perry if I have to. This, I'm a motivator. I encourage people. I even got my degree when I was going blind. I stayed in my car on the streets for a year to receive my degree. So young people couldn't come and tell me they have no excuse. I can't do this. I said, you can do anything you want to do. I had no mother or no father. I served my country, honorably discharged, and I was an honor student in college. So I talk to young people all the time. They saw me on this bus, how the bus driver told me, you dress like you somebody. you nobody, and I'm gonna whoop you, and I'm gonna show everybody that you nobody. I'm tired of people asking me who you are. A shirt and a tie is all I ever wear. I'm not trying to impress anybody, but young people today, you have to show them. You just can't tell them something, they got to see it. So I tell them, it's nothing wrong in putting on a shirt and tie when you go to apply for a job, instead of having your pants rolled down by your butt. Who's gonna hire you? Yeah, man. That's no way to approach anything. So instead of talking to them, I tried to show them. And when this guy told me, another guy, young man, said, look, you ought to beat him down. I said, no. See, so it's been 2 years, and like the drug driver said, nothing's happened. I've been put off the bus twice. And they told me that the hop is not run by the city of Temple. But every time he puts me off the bus, he calls the city police. And I noticed that the police witnesses on the bus, they never ask the witnesses, did he do anything? No, they just take me off the bus, and the bus driver speeds off. All I'm saying, we have a strong city here in Temple. I really believe that. But even the strongest body, when you have one little blood clot, it can bring a body down. And I'm here to say, and I asked the Lord, why me, Lord? Why me? But I'm here to say, there was storm brewing in this town. I'm telling you, hatred is here. I walk across the bridge going to HEB and somebody holler out, jump, nigga, jump. I go to the park and I feed the birds, and the police come to me and say, somebody reported you. It's just a strange character. I said, I'm just feeding the bird. I'm going to cover this up. Please, I'm asking with all that I know how. If anything, if they don't want me to ride the bus, just tell me. Just write it out. We don't want you to ride our bus. I don't want to be threatened. The only reason I ride the bus is because I can't get around anywhere. I'm blind. And I started to walk, and then I walked, and I went to the doctor, and they got my foot. Anyway. So I'm just coming to the city council, so I'm not trying to do anything behind your back. This is all I'm saying. Because Temple doesn't need bad publicity, I know that. But I have to handle this any way that I can, Mr. Mayor, any way that I can. And the people I used to encourage to ride the bus, now they don't want to ride the bus. What can I do? I'm just one man, but I'm going to continue to pray. But all I'm asking you, please, monitor the bus. Don't go by what I say. Just monitor it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Ms. Cynthia Washington?
I've done it already.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Deanna DeGraff?
For here.
Yep, straight ahead.
Thank you for allowing me to come tonight. I would like to personally invite everyone from the City Council and the City of Temple. I am with a group called the VIPs, which stands for Visually Impaired Persons, who are very important people. And we've been in Temple for 12 years. And each year we put on an event called Come Walk in My Shoes. And this year is our 11th year of doing it, and it is held October 10th at the Temple Public Library, 3rd floor, McLean's room. And what we do is we issue you challenges of daily living, eating, drinking, counting money, technology, braille, mobility, and it's all free of charge. It doesn't cost anything. It's open to children and adults. What we do is we will either blindfold you, or you can wear simulated glasses to see what it's like to be visually impaired. And we will take you around and give you these different challenges on daily living, and it's an eye-opening experience for most people. We do have door prizes that our local businesses have donated, and last year we had over 100 people participate, and we would love to have each and every one come. I've brought flyers for anybody that's interested, and if you need more information, my number is on there. I don't know. Can somebody come get it?
Sure. Mike, would you grab those from her and hand those up to us?
Thank you very much. Hope to see you there.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dee. Mike, thanks for doing it. Appreciate it. Next, Mr. Robert Bortz.
Thank you, Mayor, Councilman, and ladies. I'm here to substantiate Linnell's complaint. I did originally, whenever they come out and made cut the lanes for speed bumps, asked what was going on, because I knew nothing about it. I did hear the rumor that Miss Odom had got a petition together, which I knew nothing about until after the fact. Well, I called Kenny's office, and he told me that there was a petition presented, and it had 2/3 or the majority of the people's name on it for speed bumps on our street. I asked him why. He said, because they were speeding, and they're going to slow down the speed. I asked him what can be done against it. He said, well, you can get a petition if you get enough names on it. It will delay it or stop it. So I did that very same day. I walked up and down the street until I contacted everyone. One thing Linnell is a little off on, we have 18 houses on that street. It's just 16. One of them is a rent house, which I had explained to you earlier. And the traffic now that the speed bumps are in is worse. I'll agree, it is worse. They get on it and they speed off. But before those speed bumps were put in there, as I was explained to earlier today by the mayor, that the procedure that they went through on getting this information together was not the kind I anticipated. He told me that it was a little box sitting in the middle of the street that could count the cars and get the speed at the same time. What I'm disagreeing with is we do have a lot of school traffic there, bumper to bumper. You can't get out of your driveway unless somebody lets you out. So how can the average speed of that many vehicles be 38 miles an hour? It's impossible. I don't believe that the survey was taken, but I was told that they would be checked into, and I'll get a copy of it. I've asked 4 people for it. I have not received it yet. And I don't believe speed bumps were necessary. Thank you all, and I appreciate it.
Mayor, what street are we talking about?
Oaklawn.
Thank you.
And up until now, the reason there is so much traffic on that street is the school sets up there, and they come up that way, and Pin Oak is one way over to the school.
Yes.
So, yeah, I will be the first one to agree there is a lot of traffic.
Thank you, Mr. Forrest. And our last individual signed up to speak this evening is Mr. Milton Hensley. Mr. Hensley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. My name is Milton Hensley. I live at 301 Mitchell Drive. I want to remind you about this coming Sunday from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock about the life chain. I have received a lot of wonderful help from your police department, Officer Ash. He has called me several times asking if he could help. I've appeared before you prior, City Council, to remind you about this. I've contacted Highway Patrol, that's a state highway or something through there, on South 31st. And then the Temple Mall, I've contacted them, and everyone has been real, real nice. It is wonderful to live in the United States of America. Tonight it is showing it. We've had so many different ideas. Concerning the proposed amendment to the City Council, in my opinion, it should be put to a vote and let the people decide this. I think that Mayor Jones and Mr. Snyder are just as honest as the day is long. But we don't know about tomorrow. And to protect tomorrow, I think that this should be put to a vote of the people and let them decide. If they decide yay, that's good. If they decide nay, that's all right too. And then the people will have made the determination. And if anything happens, they need to remember that it was them who made the decision. That's all I got to say. And we do live in a wonderful place. And thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Hensley. That concludes our public comment portion this evening. Thanks to each of you for taking the time to be here at the council meeting this evening, expressing your opinions and making your comments. Your active involvement in our community, we are better for it. The next item on the agenda is our consent agenda. All items listed under this section consent are considered a routine by the City Council and may be enacted by one motion. If discussion is desired by the council, any item may be removed from the consent agenda and it will be considered separately by the council. This is item 5 tonight, and it's A through K. And, council, your pleasure. Are there any items you'd like to have removed for consideration or presentation? If not, then entertain a motion on this item.
Motion to approve the consent agenda items A through K as presented.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? There being none, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Jeter?
Aye.
Councilmember Jansen?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Linda?
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. Item 6 is a third reading and a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance granting a franchise to AM Construction to provide for construction job site cleaning, rental, and setting of 15-yard or less roll-off containers and the hauling of construction site waste within the City of Temple. Mr. Grant?
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. This is the third reading of a franchise ordinance that would grant a franchise to AM Construction to set containers on cleaning on construction sites in the city, to do site cleaning, and to haul those containers to city landfill. The owner of AM Construction is Billy Martone. The services he offers are some demolition work on existing structures, site cleanup for construction work sites, and as part of that, at least in some of those jobs, he sets and hauls 15-yard containers. Currently, as we've discussed in our first reading and a workshop on this item, the city hauls all of the solid waste within city limits. We have both residential and commercial franchises. The revenue from that commercial solid waste business helps city keep residential rates for twice-a-week services as low as they are. A franchise would be required to set or haul these commercial solid waste containers within the city limit. And doing so accomplishes a couple of objectives. One is it protects the financial viability of the city's own operations and avoids congestion on city streets by not having multiple providers on city streets. As I said, the services that they're proposing are primarily setting and hauling containers, and the containers are pretty small. They're smaller than the smallest container the city offers, which is 20 cubic yards. They set 15 cubic yard containers. He has a smaller truck that he's able to set these at the rear of lots. We were approached by members of the builder community who felt like that it does provide a service to their unique situation, which is helping to keep those construction sites clean, and also because it's a smaller vehicle, a smaller container, also prevents damage to when they have new construction, like newly poured sidewalks and driveways. And they're doing some work that city crews don't do as part of our sanitation service. They're cleaning work sites, and they may get called out there multiple times a day. And because this does impact our own commercial franchise, what we have discussed is it's kind of an evaluation period, a 1-year term to evaluate how well the franchise works. So as required by our city charter, we have advertised this franchise in a city newspaper, and we're proposing a 1-year initial term. Go ahead. And Mr. Martone has indicated he can live with that. He's already got his investment in his equipment. And we will monitor the impact on our own city operations in compliance with the terms of the franchise. As part of the franchise, he would pay us 5% of his gross receipt from jobs where containers are set in city limits, where it does involve actually hauling, setting containers and hauling waste. And if there are other companies doing the same thing, we would require that they either cease that activity or apply for a franchise with the city under identical terms. And I'll answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Council, questions for Mr. Graham or other staff?
This does require a public hearing.
Yes, sir. Thank you. If there are no questions, this is the third reading on this item. The franchise agreements require 3 readings. This is the third one, and we have a public hearing tonight. Anyone wishing to speak before the council on this item, please come forward and state your name and address for the record prior to making your comments.
Mike Pilkington, 5010 State Highway 317. And I didn't come here tonight intending to speak, but I use Billy's services out in the county, and I'd just like to let you know how there's one thing that I think that it does for the city that the city crews can't do is his cleanup services. He sends his guys out, keeps the job sites really clean. I think that's just good for the city. And then the other things that Mr. Graham brought up about the smaller containers and the way he's able to set them and able to set them in better locations is a bonus to that. But I think it's a real service to the city, just the fact that he has the crews to come out and keep your job sites clean. So I would ask y'all to approve this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dorkington.
Hey, Mayor and council members, Troy Glasson, Temple Area Builders Association, 12 North 5th. I'd also like to echo what Mike just indicated. I have a number of builder members who have indicated to me that they do use Billy Martone services as well. They would all like the ability to use them inside the City of Temple limits, and appreciate Jonathan Graham and his staff working with our industry on this matter. I think it would be very beneficial to the building community, and ask for your favorable consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Thank you for your comments. At this time, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Council, your pleasure on the third reading of the ordinance granting a franchise to AM Construction.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second for approval of the franchise to AM Construction for site cleaning, rental, and setting of 15-yard or less roll-off containers in the hauling of construction site waste within the City of Temple, as presented by Mr. Graham. If there's no further discussion, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Jeter?
Aye.
Councilmember Jansen?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Lehman?
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. Item 7, two-part item. First reading and a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance authorizing a zoning change from general retail to neighborhood service on lots 1 and 2, Block 56 of Freeman Heights Addition, located at 1415 West Avenue H, and multiple family 1 to neighborhood service on lots 5 and 6, Block 56 of Freeman Heights Addition, located at 1403 West Avenue H. And Mr. Mabry, you'll present that tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
The purpose of this zone change is for a flower shop that's proposed and for an existing office. There's 2 different properties that are almost right next to each other, both fronting on Avenue H between South 29th and South 27th. They're shown in hatched yellow marks on the map. Throughout the presentation and the staff report, I refer to one as Property A, which is the Haida property, which is where the flower shop is proposed for, and Property B, which is the Mott's property, and that is the property where there is already an office in place. Property A is currently Zone GR, and the request is for neighborhood service. The property B is currently multifamily 1, and it is also requested for neighborhood service. The purpose for requesting the change for property A is to make it consistent with a previously approved neighborhood service zoning change that happened a few council meetings, or actually the second reading for it was just the previous council meeting. That property that was recently changed and property A are both under the same ownership and would be the site for the proposed flower shop. In doing research on the original case, we also discovered that there is a law office that is run on property B. The zoning is multifamily 1. This change would bring that property into compliance as far as the zoning of the property. This is some of the surrounding uses around both properties. Santa Fe Hospital is to the north. There's the orangish building in between, which is an office, which recently received the neighborhood service zoning change. There's a vacant building to the east of property B, which at one time was a house, but has been various small retail uses in the past. There's a church south of property A to the rear, an apartment south of property B, and then the underground water storage facility to the west of the HIDA property A. This is the future land use map for the two properties. The designation on the future land use and character map is auto, urban, commercial, so the request for neighborhood service complies with the future land use and character map. Avenue H being a major thoroughfare on the, or a major arterial on the thoroughfare plan, makes this request comply with the thoroughfare plan. There's also adequate or available public facilities in the form of sewer and water lines serving these properties. This map shows the zoning in the general vicinity of the area. I've shaded in pink the commercial zoning in the area. So H obviously is a well-established commercial area, and so that would work in the favor of this zone change. These are the dimensional or area standards for neighborhood service. The yard setbacks are the main thing to look at on the table. A front yard setback of 15 feet, side yard of 10, and a rear yard of 0. The purpose of the neighborhood service district is just to provide low impact or low intensity uses that would be used by the surrounding residential areas. 6 notices were mailed in anticipation and notification of this rezoning. 2 were returned in favor and none were returned against the rezoning. In addition, the public notice was printed in the newspaper of this zone change as well. At its meeting on September 21st of 2009, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted 8-0 in favor of the zone change. Commissioner Pope was absent and therefore did not vote. The recommendation is for approval of ZFY 0930, a zone change from GR and MF1 to NS, Neighborhood Service Zoning District, because the request complies with the future land use and character map, it complies with the thoroughfare plan, and there are public facilities in place to serve the property. At this point, I can answer any question that the council may have on this case.
Thank you, Mr. Mabry. Council, questions for Mr. Mabry? If there are none, this item requires a public hearing on this first reading, and I'll declare the public hearing open. If you care to make a comment on either A or B, the zoning change request on either property, please come forward, state your name and address for the record prior to making your comments. Seeing no one wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Council, your pleasure on items 7, A and B, together or separately, as you wish.
Motion to approve item 7, A and B.
We have a motion. Is there a second on the item?
Second.
We have a motion and a second for item 7A and 7B. If there's no further discussion, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Jeter?
Aye.
Councilmember Jansen?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Luna? Aye. Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. Item 8 is a first reading and a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance authorizing an amendment to the tax increment financing reinvestment zone number 1 financing plan for fiscal year 2010 to appropriate funding for the feasibility study of extension of rail service with Casper, Patrick and Associates in the amount of $121,550. Ms. Bernard?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. As read in the item description, this is the amendment to the financing plan to approve the feasibility study for the extension of rail service with Casper, Patrick and Associates in the amount of $121,550. The amendment to the financing plan is proposed to be funded from the proceeds from the sale of land to H-E-B Grocery Company. The reinvestment zone received $1,117,000 in June 2009 from that sale. The reinvestment zone board approved the recommendation at its September 23rd board meeting, and I'd be happy to answer any questions related to that amendment or the contract.
Thank you, Ms. Bernard. Council, questions for staff? There being none, this item requires a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak before the council on this item, please come forward and state your name and address for the record prior to making your comment. Seeing no one wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Council, your pleasure on item 8 for the ordinance authorizing an amendment to the tax increment financing reinvestment zone number 1.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is second for approval of item 8. There's no further discussion or comment. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Jeter?
Aye.
Councilmember Jansak?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Luna?
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider? Mayor Jones?
Aye. Item 9 is to consider adopting a resolution authorizing utility cost-sharing agreements for 3 separate projects. Item A is the Hills of Westwood Phase Subdivision 5. The B is the North Cliff Subdivision Phase 9, and C is Echo Vista Subdivision Phase 2. And Mr. Graham, you want to start us off on this?
I will, and I'll take these together, if that's right with the council.
Sure you do.
Alan, would you? That's fine. We have 3 cost-sharing agreements, just to kind of refresh the council's memory. Each year, the council, under this program, budgets about $500,000 for the off-site extension of water and wastewater lines to single-family residents within the city. The commitment is to, on the part of the developer of putting these in, is to develop at least 1 residential unit per 100 feet of utility extension. And the developer is required to, if there's right-of-way deeded for the project, he's required to make every reasonable effort to acquire that right-of-way. Under the program, the city pays 100% of the first 2,500 feet of extension, 50% of the next 2,500 feet, and everything beyond that, the developer pays 100% of that cost. And these, again, are for public improvements. These are for water and wastewater lines that are built by the developer, ultimately given to the city, dedicated to the city, and become part of the city's wastewater system. The 3 proposed agreements you have before you are all what we call developer participation agreements. That is, instead of the city putting them in, the developer is actually putting them in at his own cost, and we're reimbursing them. He builds it. We reimburse, we agree beforehand what we're paying for and agree on a not to exceed amount. If the project comes in under that budget, we realize that savings. If it goes over that, our contribution is capped at our not to exceed amount. That's provided for under state law. And our commitment under these agreements is that we include the design, construction, and right-of-way costs. We total those up based on a formula depending on how far the extension is. As I just said, we're paying 100% of the first 2,500 feet, 50% thereafter. So we apply that percentage to the project, figure out what the not-to-exceed amount is, apply that percentage, and that's our not-to-exceed figure. The first of the 3 that I want to discuss is for Phase 5 of the Hills of Westwood and West Temple. The developer is Keela Development, Principal John Keela. It's for a 2,600-foot extension of an 8-inch wastewater line that will serve the development. It begins at a point on Old Wicker Road at Poison Oak and extends northward. Due to the location adjacent to the proposed outer loop, this project's a little unique in that because the outer loop, or Old Waco Road, will be rebuilt as the outer loop and widened. We're actually, as part of this project, in all likelihood, going to be required to acquire both the right-of-way for the wastewater line itself, or an easement for that, and right-of-way for the outer loop. The Westwood Phase 5 proposes building 323 single-family units, so it's well above the criteria for eligibility in the program for extensions. But because it's a pretty short extension, it's tying into an existing line. The percentages, mostly the cities, that we're paying 97.7% of that. The total cost of the project is about $193,000, and based on that, we're asking for your approval on that percentage of $188,265.06 under that agreement.
Can we just ask a quick question?
Sure. Please, yes.
So you're making the point that because we're proposing the outer loop go in that area, and as a result of that, we'll have to acquire the right-of-way for the wastewater line to be relocated, and for the outer loop itself. Are we asking the developer to acquire the right-of-way there, as in the policy, or are we saying that we'll do that because we would have to do that anyways?
Well, we're treating that as a shared cost, just like the easement, because we're moving up our timetable now. Because it's a pretty short extension, the shared cost is we're paying 97% of it. So we're buying, essentially moving up the timing for acquiring that right away because it's not in a section, it's in Phase 4 of the outer loop that we're not actively acquiring right away right now. So we're sharing in that cost.
Thank you.
This line will be installed in the new right-of-way.
Exactly.
The outer loop is built.
Right. It would make no sense to build the line by the current edge of the Old Waco Road because we'd end up moving it. So we're doing both. The second item is the Phase 9 of North Cliff subdivision. The developer is here. It's Barge Properties, the principal built barge. It's a little bit more complicated project. It involves a 1,500 foot extension of an 8-inch gravity, and that says water line, but that should be a wastewater line. Sorry. Construction of a lift station at that point, and then from there a section of forced main, and there's actually, I think, 2 pieces of gravity fed on that line. So a section that's gravity fed, then a small lift station that's going to pump it through a forced main, and then from there it will gravity up to a lift station that we have at the intersection of 2271 and West Adams. North Cliff Phase 9 is proposing 75 units. Under our formula based on that length, our participation is 86.34% of that. Total cost, or eligible costs, are $319,450. So applying that percentage to that, we're asking you for a not to exceed amount of $275,813.13 on that project. I'll take any questions on that.
Yeah. That's going out to the south on 2271.
It is.
Towards the dam.
It is.
Yeah. And the North Cliff is on the west side of that, and I believe that subdivision is pretty well all septic. And so is this line sized to be able to accept if we start to go into that area for any reason, and I guess there are already some homes within North Cliff that are within the city limits of the city, that we could begin to add those homes onto that line? And what, do you have an idea, Bruce, what capacity, how many homes that line would be able to handle?
I don't really have a number, but an 8-inch line is pretty much our standard size wastewater line, and for just about any subdivision, that's pretty much the size line that we put in.
Okay.
So, it depends on the size home and stuff, but I'd say several hundred at least.
Okay.
If not more.
If you're familiar with North Cliff, pretty well be able to handle what's out there, and
right.
You would guess.
It should be able to handle the entire area out there that's being developed, that the line is going through.
Okay.
Well, you say when it developed going through, but the old area, it should be able to handle as well.
Right.
What's there plus what
It'll
is being
handle
proposed by the
I guess
developer.
the proper term is it'll handle the basin that we see
Great.
out there in the area.
Thank you. Good. Excellent.
I didn't bring a map of this, but I mean, as Bruce is talking about, the route for this is, the subdivision is west of 2271, short distance. The developer is proposing to bring it back to 2271 and then go south a little bit with it, with the gravity fed part. And so it's actually picking up some additional commercial property that could develop along 2271 instead of having to be a septic tank. It could tie into this as well in that section. And the third item for your consideration is Phase 2 of Echo Vista, and this is on South 5th Street. It's in the general area. If you can picture you know where the existing Echo Vista is. It's very close to our water park that we just built in that area, and then there, just south of that is a church on South 5th Street, if you know that area. The developer is W&B Development, Principal Bruce Whitus. It involves an off-site extension of from a wastewater line that is going through the city park there, where we have the water park, but we also have the Frisbee Park. There's a line that runs down Friars Creek there. It intercepts there and runs about 1,830 feet, 12-inch wastewater line to this property. No off-site. It's all on city property or city right-of-way to the edge of their development. We are requesting an oversize of that, both on the park that's off-site and the park that's continuing through their property. So we've got about 1,830 feet through their property, and then there's or to their property, and then there's about 1,105 feet that goes through their property to serve a couple of their pieces of property. And for that, we don't pay on-site improvements, but we do pay, as a matter of law, for the cost of oversizing lines. So we're oversizing that line. Bruce has reviewed that, and we're oversizing that line from 8 to 12 inches. So that's the proposed project. In this phase, he's proposing 68 single-family units, so it meets the criteria you've established for off-site extensions. And because it's pretty short, we're paying, it's within the 2,500 feet, that first off-site extension, so we're paying 100% of that, and we always, as a matter of law, we pay the additional cost of oversizing lines. So this project isn't entirely our project, and so the not to exceed amount again is $208,957.29. And again, just to repeat, in each case, the developer puts these in, we review the bills. If the actual cost comes in lower than that, that's the amount we actually pay. If it's higher, the developer bears the risk of that additional cost. These are public improvements, and upon completion, we inspect those. Once we accept them, they're actually dedicated to the city, and they become part of our wastewater system. So those are the three projects. Bruce is here as well to answer any technical questions you might have as well. I think there are representatives of all three developers here, and they may, if you have any other questions as well, and I'll be glad to try to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Council, any questions of the developers themselves or staff regarding technicalities on this?
Is it correct to make the statement that this is a capital investment with the city and the developers individually, and then once these lines are in the ground and houses are hooked up to them, they become revenue generators?
That is certainly true. And I'm looking at Tracy, and I should mention she's willing me to tell you that, as I said at the beginning, the council, when you established this program, you funded it. You fund it annually at $500,000 a year for these improvements to our system. These three actually started some time ago, and one of them actually I think started in the prior fiscal year, but with the economy and things happening, it's taken longer for them to get to this point. So we're actually funding, we had about, of the 500,000 we had in the last fiscal year, we had about 480,000, something close to that, available. So we're using that remaining money from 2008, 2009, and the balance of that is actually being paid. We're in the first day of the new fiscal year. The balance is, I think, 213,000 or so is coming, will come out of the 500,000 that you've allocated for this year.
So we've been carrying those dollars over, basically?
No.
We don't. These are, we're using last year's dollars. It's just we're one day into the fiscal year.
Typically, we don't carry them over. If they're not used, they lapse. There's an exception this year for these
were
three.
encumbered last year, knowing these projects were coming.
Right.
And so for that portion that it doesn't cover, because it exceeds the remaining amount or the amount that was encumbered for 08-09, we've got another allocation of funds for 09-10 in the current budget, which starts today, and so we're going to take the remaining balance of that, which is sufficient, and then still has a remaining amount for the completion of these three projects as they're presented. Correct?
But it leaves a balance of $300,000 left for use in this fiscal year now.
Yes, $315,000 for FY 2010.
Okay. Questions from the council? Anything else? Entertain a motion for these items. Again, item 9, and it's A, B, and C. Your pleasure, councils, separately or together, as you wish.
Motion to approve items 9A, B, and C.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? There being none, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Jeter?
Aye.
Councilmember Jansen?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Luna? Aye. Councilmember Schneider? Aye. Mayor Jones?
Aye. Item 10 is to consider adopting a resolution proposing an amendment to the City of Temple Charter to be submitted to the voters on May the 8th of 2010, which would prohibit any member of the City Council or employee of the city from having a direct financial interest in any contract for the goods or services, including public works contracts let by the city, nor in any matter wherein its rights or liabilities are involved. And Mr. Blackburn.
Mayor and Council, I'll be happy to introduce this item. The item, as you just read, proposes an amendment to the city charter and also calls for an election, or asks for an election to be called on May 8th to consider that item. Mr. Graham and I have discussed the matter, as I think he has with several council members, as have I. And we do have, or he has, some background briefing material that the council has seen before and has been briefed on before. Over the past year or two, perhaps. I'm not sure how far back the material goes, but we do have that material available, and I think he's prepared to brief that in any detail that council would like to have. But our intent was to be responsive to council discussion and questions associated with this item. So with that, I'll pause and also let Mr. Graham offer any comments if he has any at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Blake. Mr. Graham,
Okay.
anything?
I do need to clarify that it's a proposed amendment to section 4.9 of the city charter.
Okay.
Mayor, I may have said this, and or I neglected to say this. The item did come forward at the request of Councilmember Jeter and Mayor Pro Tem Luna.
Thank you. Is there action desired on this item?
Absolutely. I'd like to preface this with a question for the city attorney, and then I would like clarification on can council members currently doing business with the city actually participate in this vote, or would they need to abstain from this vote?
Well, under the conflict of interest provisions, I mean, that is their determination to make. And I have discussed that with a council member or two, and that's their call to make. And I mean, I cannot give you an opinion either way. I mean, that is for their determination. I mean, the facts that I'm aware of is that this is an item not to vote on any particular contract or the award of or the expenditure of any dollars. It's merely item to consider whether to present an item to voters. And, you know, if a council member felt like that constituted a conflict of interest, he could abstain from it.
And that answer is what is driving this whole thing for me. The ambiguity of that, not to say your answer was ambiguous, but it was, because it puts it all in the purview of the council person. You know, this, from my opinion, it has very little to do with honesty and everything to do with trust and accountability and transparency. You have a situation where what they make an individual council person, me or anybody else, decides whether it's a conflict of interest, and you get into gray areas. So voting this down would mean that there would be no chance that it would come before the voters, so no chance that they could no longer do business with the city. Completely legal, but it's gray. It's, you know, we did projects, very often we discuss projects that are years out. We vote on economic development dollars. We vote on reinvestment zone plan dollars for rail extensions. And we vote and we create these projects and we bring them to fruition and we approve the funding long before they ever go to vote. And so we are in effect, we could be in effect creating opportunity for ourselves that we may one day bid. And that is what I think, it's the transparency and the accountability in that. I should not participate in that discussion at all, because it potentially can benefit me, and there's a very realistic possibility I may bid or would bid on that project. We had a recent quarry situation where we had 2 council members that had to abstain. And one of the reasons for one of the council persons is that I may do business with them in the future. Completely consistent and wholeheartedly agree. Put us in a real awkward situation and was not fun, but that same logical thinking should carry forward into everything. I may end up bidding on this, so I shouldn't participate in the allocation of millions of dollars for right-of-way acquisition for this TxDOT project, or for this economic development project, or for this study of a rail extension. That's the challenge. Not to mention, I have no doubt that what the council members have done to date has been entirely legal, and let me make that clear. I am in no doubt that we have stayed within the bounds of the law. But there is the next generation. What our current situation has, or our current charter has, and I was on the charter review committee that never envisioned this, is you have a layer directly below direct city contracts, subcontracting, providing raw materials, and all these things that is completely below the radar. No accountability, no transparency, and that's what, when we talked about we trust our council people, I appreciate that. I'm glad, but the standard should be much higher for us. The standard should be one where there is no opportunity to say what's going on there. It's things that are below the radar, and those things, that's why you bring in situations with staff pressure, and what does that do? What staff person wants to hold a city council person accountable? And those types of things. So it's not just an issue that has to do with city contracts. It's all these other areas. That local preference. What happens when a council person gets a local preference bid? It's gray and it's muddy, and you know what? If the voters say great, then great. But the voters should speak.
Comments from the council?
I have concluded. Yes, sir.
I have some questions for the city attorney. Sure. Mr. Graham, did you author this proposal to the city charter?
No, sir.
Did your department vet this proposal?
No, sir.
Okay, so it was written by somebody and proposed. So you didn't have any input to it at all?
No, sir.
Okay. Do you find that inordinate that a city attorney would not be consulted at all with a proposed amendment to the city charter?
I'm going to speak up. I asked him, and he wouldn't because he was uncomfortable. There's a perfect situation. How comfortable would you want to be? Stuck in the middle of that one. No, that's an uncomfortable situation. And so, answering what you're going to, no, I researched this, talked to lawyers, talked to people from other cities, and when I finally got it on the agenda, that's the only point in time that I could get feedback on it.
Can I ask, is this, we have a proposal that was brought by a council person. How is this different than several years ago when Ralph Sheffield was head of the Restaurant Association and brought forth a petition for us to take to a vote the issue having to do with wine sales in Temple?
Is that a question for Jonathan?
That's a question for John.
How is it different than
different.
Well, I mean, it's different because I would tell you that, as we've discussed in our prior workshops, under state law for cities that have home rule charters and under our own charter, there are a number of ways the charter can be amended. There is a petition process so that voters of the city who approve the current charter that has the current provision in there, they could petition the city council with a certain number of signatures to ask you to place an item on the ballot. They could write it themselves, and if they did and they had the required signatures and it was verified by the city secretary, you would be compelled as a matter of law to place that on the ballot. The initiative that you were speaking about a couple of years ago was just that kind of thing. I think that was actually a county election, but the principle is exactly the same. There's a procedure set into law. If they get a certain number of signatures, that governing body that could call that election actually is compelled to call the election. Under that same law that I'm talking about, state law and our charter, the council may also elect to place items directly on the ballot to amend the charter before the voters. So and this is answering your prior question as well. It's not entirely unusual that the council might choose to do that. It would be unusual that before you placed it on the ballot, I would recommend as the city attorney that you let me review it and make recommendations to it.
Have you reviewed this?
Well, I have reviewed it since it appeared in our packet, and I could review it further in the future. And if it's not clear to you already, if you were inclined to take action on it, you would not be bound to present it to the voters in the form it was presented to you. I mean, you have the absolute right to not present this to the voters in that form, or to change the form, or to do other things. There is, we've talked about other things there. The prior times we've amended, I've been here 21 years, we've amended this charter, I think, at least 3 times. 2 of those were pretty substantial efforts where the council actually appointed a charter review committee. The change, the language that we're really talking about today is really the result of a charter committee that was appointed in 1989. I just got here. That was composed of 30 members of the community, including past mayors, and they studied the charter for almost 6 months. And one of the changes they recommended is the change to the current provision we have in the charter, which follows state law, which says that council members may do business, but they cannot participate in the discussion or deliberation of that item. And that is a change from the common law, which said that you couldn't do that, which is what our old charter says. It was a black and white rule that said if you're an elected official, you could not do business with the city. And that change reflected changes in state law and local law in things like the fact that cities now do competitive bidding and things like that. So in a long way, I guess I'm telling you, that is a third way, which is a charter review committee, which is what occurred in 1989, which got our current language, which was voted on and approved by voters in 1990.
Can you refresh my memory? Did the Bioscience District, did they submit one or more petitions calling for an issue to an election?
I think they've just done one. There was legislation passed that created that district. We called an election for that as required by that state law.
So we followed the same state law in that case.
And then they did use a provision in that same law which allowed them to come back to voters to ask them to approve authority to levy a tax. By law, we were required to call that election for them. We did so, and that passed.
You'd mentioned you'd been with the city since 1989. In your experience, are you aware of any malfeasance of a city council member that has done business with the city?
I'm not aware of one.
You are not aware?
I am not aware.
Thank you.
Would it be safe to say also that, would you have any idea how much in terms of dollars went to council people outside of city contracts, whether it be construction manager at large, supplier contracts, subcontracting? Would you have any idea of that?
No.
Would that be a matter of public record?
No.
So there would be no way to know that. Interesting on the the questions about the petition drives. All of those instances, which I don't think are really relevant to this situation, but relevant in the sense they were petition drives, they all raised tens of thousands of dollars to pull those petition drives off. And they hired professional people like the one undergoing right now as well to get signatures. It is no easy process, and I think that's an important thing that it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be an easy process to slap a petition and throw something on there. It should require hard work, energy, and effort. I think this is different because over a year ago, in April 2008, I started asking for to address ethics, the ethics reform, and whether it be an ethics commission, charter review, and conflict of interest, and made no headway for a year and a half, and decided that I needed to approach it in a different way, and that is why we're here today.
I guess I would argue that this is not special, and it is circumventing the process. There is an established process that has been out there, and in fact, what you're asking to do is to circumvent that because this is some kind of special occasion. And I would tell you that I'm very uncomfortable with that. If there is this groundswell of support that here's all this malfeasance with the council people and we're all this unethical, then there won't be any problem in getting signatures. Why don't you, it shouldn't be a problem at all. Have them tomorrow.
Interesting, once again, in anticipating, trying to think through what the discussion would center on today, and that several red herrings been presented along this whole process. We can't get good people, all these other things if we do this. Notwithstanding, the city has survived 100 years prior to changing it, but forcing, there is precedent as well. The city, the council has put charter amendments on for ballots. That's one of the things the charter review committees do. They say we want to do these. The council has in effect actually modified those and placed them on the ballot. This is no different.
Well, it is. There's no committee. It's an individual. It's a single agenda and with a proposal written by a layman.
Not a single agenda, not a single individual. You have two council people that place this on the agenda. Written, it's been vetted now that it's been on. Jonathan, would this be enforceable? Would there be anything that would keep this from being enforceable? Is there anything that would cause this to be considered a layman? And I'm proud not to be a lawyer, no offense, but would this be enforceable?
I think it would be enforceable. It's probably not exactly the way I would write something today. But again, as I said in my comments, if the council desired to present something to the voters, you can change this, and I could look at it. alternative.
In response to Councilman Jansek's comments, that's the beauty of where we're at right now. We have 5 people elected by the people to decide whether or not we're going to give those same people that elected us the opportunity to vote on this issue. And with that in mind,
I have a few things to say too, if you don't. If it's
absolutely
okay.
not. Yes, sir.
I would like to say, as contractors or material suppliers, I can't speak for the mayor, we do not fly under the radar. The radar is actually bright and it lasts all day, and then some. As far as subcontractors, the city employs or contracts with a general contractor, a construction manager at risk or whatever, to make sure that those funds are done properly and subcontracts are written properly and that change orders are done properly. It's not under the radar. It's not a good old boy deal. They hold us to the extent in the letter of the law. Most all change orders or any subcontractors are done by unit price. How do you prove the cost of the change orders? They're looked at by the engineer, architect of record, and they're professionals in that area. Their stamp depends on that. Most of the city projects that we subcontract directly with the city are processed by the engineer of record. The bid process is by the engineer of record. The bid opening is by the bid engineer of record. Publicly open in front of all contractors bidding. So we do not fly on the radar. After the project is awarded, generally the engineer of record is the inspector on the project. He is not going to let you get away with anything by flying under the radar because his little stamp on the side is his future. His stamp depends on that project gets done correctly. Our monthly estimates are not taken to the city to shove them down their throat and pay us this much. It's taken to the city engineer of record. He reviews it out on the project to make sure what we're billing for that month is correct, and then presents it to the city and says it's okay to pay. And then we'll get the checks from the city. So it's not on the radar. It is a huge level of responsibility by the engineer as well as the contractor. Also, I appreciate Mr. Hensley's comments as far as honesty and everything, and I think I don't think Mr. Jeter has a problem with that, but it's just a shame to discount a person that wants to serve a community that happens to do business in this community. It's a shame. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think there's a charter that says you do it this way. If you don't do it this way, there's repercussions. And so I don't believe that's been done. I don't believe it's broke. I have got 0 phone calls in saying change this charter. I've got 1 email on Wednesday of this week that asked to vote yes, and I've just got presented 2 today, about an hour and a half ago, that basically wanted to say yes as well. So there's 3 there. I've responded to all the letter of the editors I can, if I can find their number in the paper that's talked about this, and visit personally with them. I've done that, and so that's 5 or 6 people. And for my constituents that I'm supposed to be representing, they asked me, to go this way or that way, and I don't feel that there's enough votes to generate for us to say, let's put this in the ballot and vote. I mean, I believe if that needs to take place, there needs to be a flourish of folks, and it goes that way, and that's the way I feel. So I want to make sure everybody understands we do not fly under the radar. And there is, I'm sorry, did you speak?
No, go ahead.
And there is a huge accountability to suppliers and contracts. I'm not saying that will reduce the pool of people, good people. There are good people out there that are retired, that's been in the business and been businessmen. There are good people that can service community and will service the community. But I don't think you should discount the fact that just because I'm still young enough to do business, or anyone young enough to do business, that you discount their ability and desire to be a part of the city
Ms. Bernard, in reference to the under the radar, I want to qualifying for all the folks that are watching as well as out. We don't call this the audience. What do we call this out here?
Citizens.
Citizens. Once again, I want to clarify, this is not about the bid process. This is not about the quality. There's no doubt that when a project is let and it's bid and it goes through the quality, that this is not what that's about. But Ms. Bernard, for instance, on the Windland Road project, that was, $4 million that we just dedicated on June 30th. Do you have any idea how much that general contractor paid all their subcontractors? What they paid for materials? Is that public record?
The pay estimates are.
But what they pay, who?
But as far as their general contractors, I have no record.
Okay, the point is that is what is under the radar. It's this, not the direct contracts. It's all the things that go on after jobs have been let to people other than council people. It's the whole voting on projects that may or may not benefit you a year or two down the road. It's a complete red herring. It's a complete distraction to think about this is only about our purchasing department does it by the book. There's no doubt. They're good at what they do. There's no doubt that in my mind that anything wrong has happened with anything that a council person has been associated with in that respect. It is much broader and deeper. Under the radar are all the dollars that fully legal, but that we, as the taxpayers, have no idea what amount of taxpayer dollars are going to council people. Bottom line, whether it's directly or indirectly, we don't have any idea. And it's not, that's the transparency. And that's the accountability that need to be there.
It's my turn.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't think there's anything, certainly, that's improper going on. And I started out with a different set of mindset, but then people keep calling me. They keep grabbing me in the post office, HEB, and it's just a perception that there's something wrong with the council people doing business with the city. If so many people feel that way, I feel that we should listen to let them make the decision. They want to vote on it, the ones that I've talked to, and I've had some more contacts today. I had some emails today. I just feel it's the thing to do to let the citizens decide.
Well, yeah.
Talking about subcontractors and bids, say construction manager at risk. Okay? Let's say it's the police station. It may be a Belinda question. When you hire a general contractor, the construction manager at risk, they may say that I'm going to bid this thing and then I'm going to make 3% of whatever the contract is, correct, or something like that. Okay. When on bid day, when all the subcontractors bid that project, are you able to look at all the subcontractors bid and make sure they use the lowest responsible bidder?
Yes, we do have that ability.
Have the ability, but have we done that in the past?
We did that on the municipal court building.
And are they required? That's the first time after I brought that up we started doing it. But are they also required by law to use the people they specify in that contract, or can they switch if they choose?
It's according to the way it's defined, the procedures, they should be using those contractors that they define.
Okay.
And do they, whenever they turn in their bid, they typically list each subcontractor in each division that they've used with their amount to come up with their budget?
That is correct.
And if you thought that was wrong, or any council person thought, public knowledge thought that was wrong, they could probably ask that contractor for their other bids?
Yes, it could.
And weren't we doing that for the purpose of holding an out-of-town contractor responsible for doing business with local bidders as much as they could, so that even an out-of-town contractor, if he used enough in-town contractors, if we would view it as helping the local economy. We weren't giving a job to somebody in Dallas that was going to use people from Tyler and from Victoria and from San Angelo to do work in Temple, Texas. And here we are talking about eliminating local bidders.
That wasn't that job, Mayor.
No, in general, we were talking about, that's why we did what we did to ask
help
about
us
that
to
accountability.
evaluate whether we ought to grant
Yeah,
another
I wasn't
person.
speaking of any particular job. I was talking about the we did identifying contractors and then holding the contractors' feet to the fire as to who they used for subcontractors, trying to make sure if they said they were going to use a local bidder, that they used the local bidder that they said they were going to. They didn't switch and use their buddy from Austin when it was an out-of-town contractor, when they came before us and said, I'm going to use Temple bidders, and so even though I'm out of town, I'm still bringing a lot of work here. I'm going to employ local citizens, and I'm going to buy my materials locally. That's what we were trying to hold them accountable for.
In that instance, yes, sir.
Let me ask a question in reference to what Mr. Jeter said earlier to, what you call it down here? Most of the prices, contracts are unit price bids, which that means that every piece of the project is broke out into numerous bid items. For instance, 18-inch water pipe, 8-inch sewer pipe, a manhole cover, a service, a foot of curb and gutter, a square yard of asphalt, whatever it might be. So at any point, you can go in there and if I'm a general contractor and I have a utility contractor, you can go look at any line item and break it out per lineal foot, what you're paying for that.
Sure. I mean, but that's not public. It's not something that is common knowledge.
It's public knowledge. You can go look at any time. If it bothers you, you can go look at any time you want to.
It's not about, you can pick individual things, but overall, there's not transparency in the process other than direct bids. And one other comment I want to make on the petition and that's how we ought to do it. I think it's an interesting thought process to require more citizens than even elected you to sign a petition to get this on the ballot. How many signatures are required for the petition? 1,400 and
Percentage of registered voters.
It's also the entire city and not a single district.
more than voted for the mayor. The point is, it is no small
The point is,
task.
it doesn't happen 3 times before.
With
Why can't you do it?
Go and raise.
Nothing to it. It's a groundswell of support.
No, they go and raise a whole lot of money. They stand at Walmart and beg everybody that walks in Walmart to sign the petition, and then they vet through, and everybody who's not a citizen, they cross them off.
Right.
There wasn't a groundswell of support.
No, in your case, you're saying that it's a groundswell of support. Well, if it is, then it shouldn't be a problem. It's registered voters within the city of Temple, whatever the correct amount that Claudia says. And as far as being transparent, Ms. Ensminger, how many FOIA requests, Freedom of Information requests, have been submitted to your office regarding this issue? About close.
This particular issue?
This particular issue.
I don't recall any.
You don't recall any?
Not regarding this.
No, she's referring, you say this issue,
Oh, no.
meaning the charter amendment.
The charter amendment having to do with council members doing business with the city.
I've received, I think, I know one.
Okay,
Sure.
at least one.
At least one.
And we provided the information?
That's correct.
Okay. And so, and obviously, there wasn't any, that didn't appear on the front page of the Telegram, so therefore, by extension, there was no heinous crime that was committed. Okay, that's a statement. Okay, not a question. Right, so there is transparency. Anybody that wants it can see you and sign their name on that paper, and you will very cheerfully give them all the information they want.
That's correct. We have it. Thank you.
And I asked Belinda, if someone come to you or public knowledge want to know a subcontract amount for any subcontractor under a general contractor, you could give that as public information as well, the contract amount.
We wouldn't have it specifically. The only thing that could be that type of information is the pay request that has detailed information.
Doesn't each subcontractor have to turn in a separate schedule of values to the general contractor in which he develops his own schedule of values, which you have privy to as well?
We do not have that in our records in purchasing.
But you could get it if asked of the general contractor?
Maybe not.
I'm going to say we had not asked for that. To clarify what
Let me back up.
Okay.
You'd almost have to know that, because especially in a contract where they're going to get 3% of that, if their scheduled value for plumbing or HVAC is X amount of dollars, you know that 97% of that subcontractor, and they're only going to get 3%. You'd have to know that. You'd have to know that in order to know what hard dollars they're spending on subcontractors in order for you to pay them the 3%, wouldn't you?
Is this, can I ask you? Sure. Are you speaking of a bid or a construction manager?
I'm construction manager at risk, because that seems to be under the radar, because you go hire a general contractor and they publicly advertise the bid, and they get all these subcontractors. We have the feeling that nobody gets to see those, and they can go pick and choose whoever they want to, and you don't know what you're paying for. But if you're going to pay them 3% of the cost of that project, you better know for each division what that subcontract is. So you're going to pay 3% on it.
Well, I'll let Belinda answer the construction manager at risk.
I'm a little bit concerned when you're referring to the 3% thing, because there's a fixed fee, there's a management fee, but it's not a percentage.
Or if it's a cost plus a fee.
Right.
That'd be a cost plus a fee. If it's 3%, 4%, or 5%.
But it's a flat fee on their pay estimate is what I see come through.
Hey, voters, if we can confuse our own purchasing people, there needs to be some transparency. And with that in mind, I would like to make the motion that we approve the resolution for an amendment to Section 4.9 of the city charter.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and there is further discussion. I haven't had a chance to say anything, but so I'll take that opportunity. As many of you know, I've abstained many times from votes. Many of the votes I abstained from, really, in fact, most. I think there's only been 2 times I've abstained when there was times when a company that I owned had the possibility of getting work because of a general contractor that might have bid from me. The vast majority of time I abstained was because a competitor was going to get the job, and so even though I was not even one of the bidders that was going to be awarded, it was a competitor, so it could be construed as me being a conflict depending on which way I voted, so I abstained from discussion and participation in the vote. So the vast majority of the time I abstained while I wasn't being considered. I think the last 6 times I abstained, or 4 to 6, and abstained from the discussion was when the quarry rezoning came before us, and I happened to have owned a quarry that would have been a competitive quarry, so I abstained from any discussion or any vote on that particular issue, when, again, it wasn't anything I was going to receive any remuneration for, or my company was, or anything. So, again, it was a matter of, to be totally above board and transparent and all that should abstain from the discussion, and so I did in those cases as well. Now, I still own I don't own those companies any longer, but I still own a company that does business with the city, I guess on a fairly regular basis, because the city comes and buys steel from my company. And I don't know that we bid. I know we don't bid a steel contract. If it falls within a certain parameter, they can bring a credit card over and they can buy steel. And it might be a piece of steel or a sheet of steel, and I don't know anything about it. It just happened. They do it because it's convenient for the city. And whether it's steel or pencils or whatever it might be, where if a particular member of the council happened to own a business that it was convenient for the city, there was good value in that, either because of location, because of inventory, but they were small enough purchases that there weren't contracts for them or anything, T-shirts or whatever it might be.
Mayor, I do think it's very important that everybody understand that if we're making those purchases, it's because it's it's under a threshold amount. It's less than $25,000 a year.
Sure, and I'm getting that, it's going to show that there's different levels. There's a level where they don't have to get a bid. There's a level where they have to get 3 bids, and they can do that within purchasing. Or if there's a contract that exceeds $25,000, then it comes before the council. And so obviously, the steel purchases are below that. So there's business done regularly in which the city chooses to buy from a company that I happen to own, and I never know about it, and it never comes before us. So I could easily, we could easily fix this, and I could, if this were to pass and the voters said they didn't want us to do business anymore, so there might be other steel suppliers in Temple that have some inventory. Otherwise, if there's not, then they go to Waco or they buy out of town. And again, those are situations, they're examples, they're ones I'm very familiar with. Now to the broader subject of the matter at hand, my comments are, yes, Mr. Jeter has been talking about this for 2 years, or close to it, and there doesn't seem to be a huge groundswell to move this forward, and had people call for a charter review, had citizens calling for some type of petition to be able to bring this forward. So it appears to be a singular individual with an issue, and then it's recently gotten to the point where, because some people got in touch with the Mayor Pro Tem, that the 2 council members did what is appropriate, what's allowed, and that's to have it put on the council agenda. I look at the charter as a very, very important document for this city. That I believe the threshold should be higher to amend that document, to modify the document of the charter of the city of Temple, or any city for that matter, but we're concerned about the city's charter, that it be held to a higher standard, that it not be something that's easy to do, that I don't, even though this process is available to us, 2 council members or the mayor can put it on the agenda and it be brought forward, I think it should be more difficult than that. This is allowed, but then it comes before us for a vote, and we decide whether it should be there. And I think there should be a much broader cross-section of the community, and there's 2 ways that can be done, and so it can be brought to the citizens for a vote in 2 other ways, and one is a petition, and the other is a call for a charter review, which happens over time. It's happened in the past. Mr. Graham's been here for 20 years, and it's happened 3 times. And so it's very possible. And if we had a charter review in the late 90s, because we had a 2000 charter change and charter amendments, and so it does happen. This charter has been in the past amended to address this issue. It used to forbid, as was brought up before, the council's members doing business with the city receiving any benefit or remuneration as a result of contracts or awards. And the citizens of this community did have a charter review, and they did vote. They had the opportunity to vote at one point in time to change the charter, and they voted to change the charter to what it says today, and that allows for it. And again, there may be more safeguards today than there were at that point in time, so there are circumstances that were different that allowed them to make that change, and for those who reviewed the charter to consider that there were the safeguards in place. It was something that they felt comfortable in presenting to the voters, and the voters evidently made that decision because that's the way the charter reads today. So the citizens have voted, and this is what they voted to do. They can, and they certainly have the opportunity to vote again and make that decision if there's enough interest for them to do so. There's a petition process that can be gone through, and maybe it is more signatures than elected me at one point in time, or elected any council member, but again, we're talking about amending the charter of the city of Temple, Texas. And if there's not that much interest, then maybe we shouldn't be amending it. And that's my say. And anyone else have any comments on that? We have a motion and a second on the floor.
I guess I would briefly like to say I have been served on the council for 20 months. I've yet to submit an abstention. I have full faith and confidence that that will happen someday, but I don't know when. But the potential is there, and it's an individual thing depending on that. I would argue that what is written is not appropriate for the citizens of Temple and would preclude, it goes too far of even enforcement. You're not able to do that. And I'll just pick on the mayor here of the product that he sells. If a City of Temple employee or a contractor that has gotten a bid, the contractor that received the bid to install the new pumps in the sewage treatment plant needs a 3-inch I-beam to help to put to the crane to set those pumps, and he sends his guy to Temple Steel and buys that I-beam, the mayor's in violation. Okay, and that's wrong. How does he know? How's he going to force it? Oh, no, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you. Doesn't even know. Okay, if you work for Scott and White, or you're married to somebody, or it's your mom or your dad that work for Scott and White, you can't serve on the city council.
Completely
untrue.
Completely untrue.
So we do $1.6 billion with Scott and White every year.
That is not, if you see.
Jamie Clements would not be eligible to be the mayor, to serve the city of Temple, written this way.
Notice the word direct. It is not, that is not true. Mayor, we can take this till 8 o'clock, but we'll go ahead and everybody's pretty much made their mind. Let's vote on it. But that is not a true statement.
Any other comments or questions? If not, Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Jeter?
Aye.
Councilmember Jansak?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Luna?
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider?
No.
Mayor Jones?
No. Item 11 is to consider adopting a resolution appointing one member to serve as the city's representative on the Board of Directors of the Tax Appraisal District of Bell County for a 2-year term beginning January 10th of 2010. Mr. Del Martin has served in the role as the City of Temple designee for the Board of Directors of the Tax Appraisal District of Bell County, and he is willing to serve in that role going forward. And
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Del Martin.
Okay.
Del Martin has served in that role and is willing to continue to serve in that capacity if elected by the council. So I would make a recommendation for the council's consideration that we consider appointing Del Martin to again serve as the City of Temple designee to the Board of Directors of the Tax Appraisal District of Bell County.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion? Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Jeter?
Aye.
Councilmember Jansak?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Luna?
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your participation and your attendance this evening. That concludes this evening's agenda. We are adjourned.